Well, we finally have Mountain Lion, or to give it its full title, OS X 10.8. In very much the same way that Snow Leopard built on the original release of Leopard, Mountain Lion builds on the original release of Lion in three significant areas. Firstly, we can see some enhancements to the original features first introduced with Lion. Secondly, we have some new applications and features that have been transferred across from iOS. And thirdly, and for me the most significant part, is that we now have full integration with iCloud. In this first look at Mountain Lion, I'll be taking an initial look at some of the enhanced features. Now, there are over 200 new features in Mountain Lion, and I'll not be covering each one, but those that I do cover, I'll try and cover in depth. Now, I will assume some knowledge of Lion, but if you're upgrading directly from Snow Leopard or earlier, it might be worth checking out the previous Lion episodes on the Screencast Online website, or getting the SCOtutor for Lion application from the Mac App Store. But let's start off by looking at some of the more obvious, and perhaps not so obvious changes to the desktop and the user interface. Now let's start off with the basics, and let's start by taking a look at the dock. Now at the moment I have the standard 3D dock down at the bottom of the screen, and they have given it a bit of an overhaul. They've polished it slightly. We have a new bottom plate. This to me looks as though it's a new metallized plate, but they've changed the indicator lights. Now underneath icons of applications that are running, we usually have these small indicator lights, and they're made even smaller now by these small sort of what look like LEDs embedded into the edge of the dock. So I can see here I have Finder running, I have Safari, I also have two other applications, Omni Outline Professional and ScreenFlow doing the screen capture. And as you can see, we have these small LED dots at the bottom of the dock. The other controls on the dock are pretty standard, so we can go to the separator bar, controller right click, we can turn hiding on, we can turn magnification on, get the nice big icons, etc. So that is all pretty standard. Now, they have made a subtle change to removing icons from the dock. You could previously just drag an icon off and it would sort of escape in a puff of smoke, but if I let go now, you'll see that doesn't actually work anymore. I think what they've done is they've made it slightly more difficult to do so you don't do it by accident. If you just drag it a bit further away, you'll see as you drag it further away from the dock, we can then let go and it will disappear in a puff of smoke. So if you find that that's not working, you just have to drag it a bit further away from the dock than normal. But let's leave that there for now. Another change is the inclusion of some additional progress indicators in the dock, one of which is via the App Store, and the other one is just when you're copying files around locally. Let's have a look at the App Store one first. If I go to the App Store, another interesting thing actually is they now appear to allow you to download Mountain Lion again, whereas they didn't do that with Lion. Once you downloaded it, it sort of disappeared and you had to do some hacks to get it, but you can download it again. So if I go ahead and say download, it's already installed, but that's fine. We'll just say download. So if we continue, zoom. Okay, we can now see the progress bar. If I hover over, you can actually now get an indicator. You'll see Launchpad downloading and how far it's got. So, and we can also see underneath the icon a progress bar. Let me cancel that. So I'll go into purchases and we'll pause. I'll cancel that later. Let's close that down. The local copy allows us to, let's go to my downloads folder, change the view to a folder. I prefer it as a folder. If I now go to the Finder, go to Documents, right, I have a copy of my Mountain Lion installer. The only reason I'm using this is it's quite a large file and it will take a few seconds to copy across. If I drag that across to my Downloads folder, and then hit the Alt or Option key and let go, right, that's copying it across. In the Finder, we have this new progress bar. We have our standard copy window, but also down in the dock, we have a progress bar underneath the Downloads folder as well. So some nice visual feedback on how that's actually being copied across. And then that's it completed. So that's about it for the Finder. And to be honest, other than the progress bars, Finder hasn't changed that much. Let's just pop that down. You'll see we still have this progress indicator on here showing that the download from the App Store is paused. And let's go ahead and cancel that. So if I go back across to the App Store, go to my purchases. Okay, there's the download ready to resume. Just click on the line, then hover over the button, hit the Alt or Option key. So cancel appears, click cancel, or say cancel download. Okay, and that's now cancelled. Close down the App Store. One other thing about the App Store as well If we look at the menu bar, it seems pretty standard. There's a new entry which we'll cover in the next section. But if I go to the Apple menu and do a software update, all software updates now will come from the App Store itself. So that includes system changes and also application updates. But as you can see, no updates available. Now let me just go back to the dock. I tend to have the dock hidden, to be honest. So I'm going to say turn hiding on. Oh, by the way, position on screen, the 2D versions of the dock, either on the left or the right-hand side, are the same. So I won't show you that, but let me just turn hiding on, and there's my dock gone. Okay, back up to the menu bar. Everything looks the same, except for the top right-hand corner. Spotlight has been ousted and is now no longer taking the prominent position in the top right-hand corner. We have this new icon, which is actually the notification center. So for this section, let's take an in-depth look at the new notification center in Mountain Lion. Notification Center is one of the technologies brought across from iOS, and it's a way of centrally handling all the notifications from the various applications you have installed on your system. Now, at the moment, only those applications installed by Apple are actually configured for Notification Center, although we will see more coming along. But let's just tap in and have a look. Basically, if I tap into the icon in the menu bar, you'll see from the side we get this new view. The entire desktop moves across to the left-hand side, and we have this single panel down the right-hand side showing me those alerts or notifications from applications that are currently configured. So at the moment, just my calendar. So I can see I've got 3 events in my calendar that are coming up. Also, I've had a new mail from Facebook as well. Now, to close that down, I can just again click on the icon. That disappears. Now, you can use gestures as well. So if I want to use a gesture on a trackpad, basically what you do is swipe in from the right-hand side with 2 fingers, and that opens it up. And again, swipe with 2 fingers to the right, and that closes it. In fact, let's go into System Preferences. Just to illustrate this for you, if we go to Gestures under Trackpad, scroll and zoom, is it? No, here we go, more gestures. Notification Center. You'll see swipe from the right-hand side, and then swipe back out again to remove it. Okay, let me close that down. Now, that will also work on a Magic Trackpad, although I understand it's a little bit more tricky because it's a raised surface, but if you persevere, I'm sure you'll get the hang of it. Now, for those keyboard junkies who don't really want to use gestures, or perhaps you have a Magic Trackpad and you don't like the way it's implemented on there, you can set up a keyboard shortcut. To do that, it's under Keyboard Shortcuts in your System Preferences. So again, I'll go back into System Preferences. I can see keyboard there. Another quick way to do this actually is just to type in keyboard. There's Keyboard Shortcuts. Hit return, takes you straight there. Okay, if I go to Mission Control, and here we have an option to show Notification Center. Now, I've actually already switched this on and switched this off before. When you come to here, this will probably be blank, but I've previously used Command Escape as my shortcut. So let's select there. If you want to change this, I say yours will be blank anyway, so you'll need to double click and set your keyboard shortcuts. But I'll go with Command Escape, close that down. So now on my keyboard, hit Command Escape, pops it open. Command Escape pops it shut again. Okay, what I'm going to do now is go across to another machine and send myself an email. And we should see a banner appear in the top right-hand corner indicating that a new mail has appeared. So let me just go ahead and do that. So there we are, a message from Don McAllister. How are you linking Mountain Lion? Okay, slight typo in the message I sent myself, but not to worry, and it's gone. So you can see it come in, but it will disappear. That's a banner. So it's sort of a notification that a mail has arrived. If I go into Notification Center, if I swipe across, okay, can I see this new one here? This is the mail. I can click on the mail, and there we are. There's our new mail. So I can read that. Let's read the other one as well. Okay, so all mails are now read. If I pop that down, swipe across back into Notification Center, and those 2 email notifications are gone. I've read those emails, so they've now disappeared. Let's go in now and let's reconfigure our mail configuration so that rather than having banners, we have alerts, and they will stick on screen so that we can actually read them and process them from there. Now, to do that, different ways to get into Notification Center configuration. The easiest way is while you have it open down here at the bottom, there is an icon, which if you click, it will open the Notifications Center configuration panel directly in System Preferences. So here we can see these are all Apple applications here. So Calendar, FaceTime, Game Center, Mail, Messages, Reminders, and Safari. These will all generate notifications in Notification Center. But the one I want is Mail. So currently set to banners. If I want it to be an alert, I'll set that as an alert. Show the 5 most recent items, so the last 5 emails or unread emails that have come in, the badge app icon, and play a sound when receiving notifications. I've actually switched off the sounds on my recording, so you won't hear that. But okay, so I've now set that to alerts. Let's close that down, and let's go back across to my other machine and send a second email. Okay, and there we have a new type of alert this time. Rather than the banner, we have an alert. You'll notice the difference here is that we have a close and open. So I can actually just close that for now, or I can open the message from here. But the nice thing is that will stay on screen, so I can't ignore that that's arrived. Now there's a new facility in Mail which we'll look at later, which is all to do with assigning people as VIPs. So you can set up alerts from people who are VIPs that will appear in Notification Center, so you don't miss any mails from any VIPs. But let's just go ahead and say open, and there we go. There's my new email. And again, swipe across. No emails because I've read them all now. There's no unread emails. Now for email alerts, you do need to have your email client open, so you need to have mail running in the background for alerts. Okay, let me pop that down. Let's just go back and configure another type of alert. Let's have a look at reminders. So if I go back to, well, let's get to it from System Preferences this time. So I go to System Preferences, you'll see here we have access to the notifications configuration. Click on there. It's exactly the same panel as we saw before. If I go down to reminders, so these are currently set to alerts anyway. So if we have a reminder that's current, it will actually pop an alert on screen, but it will look slightly different. In fact, let me do that. So if I go into the reminders application, so this is the new Reminders application. Now we will look at reminders in more detail in a later section, but basically it's another technology or another application that's been brought across from iOS. And the beauty of it now is that we have a single reminder system that is cross-platform, synchronized via iCloud. So if I create a reminder on my Mac, it will appear on my iPhone or iPad. And also if I create it on my iPad or iPhone, it will appear on my Mac. Now what I'm going to do is just create a simple reminder that is going to appear within Notification Center. So the time's around about, let's see, it's 11:35. I'm going to create a reminder for 11:37. If I go to the little plus icon, add a reminder, boil an egg, go to here and click on the I on a day. Okay, so it's set to today at 12 o'clock, but I'm going to say 11:37. And we'll say done. Okay, so that's my reminder now set. I can pop that down out of the way. And we'll just wait for 11:37. So I've just switched on the date and time in the menu bar. So it's now 11:36. So any second now we should get our alert. And there we go. Boil an egg now. I can either close the alert, go ahead and boil my egg, or if I'm not quite ready to boil my egg, I can have a snooze. So if I click on snooze, that actually will snooze that alert for 15 minutes for me, and then in 15 minutes time it should pop back and remind me again. Now I did mention in the introduction to this section that currently only Apple have applications that are enabled for Notification Center, and there's a bit of a misconception that only third-party apps that are sold through the App Store will be able to use Notification Center, and that's actually not true. Any application can actually use the Notification Center if it uses the APIs that Apple have published, as long as they're done locally. It's only applications that use remote alerts that will use iCloud to synchronize alerts between devices or platforms. Those applications do have to be sold via the Mac App Store. Case in point is the recent alpha version of Tweetbot that has Notification Center alerts built in. And in fact, let me install that so you can see what it looks like when a third-party app does have the integration. So if I just go across to Safari. Okay, so this is a new alpha version of Tweetbot, and it's very stable actually. Although it is an alpha version, you can download and install it, have a play with it. I'm going to download it and install it. You'll see it's some nice animation on the website there. It's rating to crack out, but let's go ahead. And again, Safari has changed. There's a new Omnibox rather than separate URL box and search box. But again, we'll look at Safari in a bit more detail later on. If I have a look, in fact, I've already installed Tweetbot on this machine, so I'm not going to install it again. Let me pop that down. Let me run it. So Tweetbot. First time I've run it on this particular user. So we'll say open Need to sign in with Twitter. And lo and behold, there is our boil and egg. Let me just close that down. And it disappears in a puff of smoke. Okay, let's authorize Tweetbot for Mac to use our account. So that's my SEO demo credentials on Twitter. We'll say authorize app. Again, I'll leave that for now. Now, this alert is connected with the Twitter integration that's built into Mountain Lion, but again, I'm going to say not now for this. We'll look at Twitter integration as a separate issue. Okay, so there is my Tweetbot. 3 new tweets have just come in. Let me go in and change my notifications. If I go to Tweetbot Preferences, so if I just reposition this window and then just tap on the Notifications tab to open up the Notifications panel. So if I want mentions from people who follow me, if I want alerts for direct messages, for retweets and for favorites, and for anyone who follows me. Okay, so that's my notifications set up. Now let me go across to another machine and send a direct message to SEO Demo from my other Twitter account, and I'll give them a mention as well, and we should see those appear within Notification Center. Okay, so there's a banner. I've just sent a mention from my own personal Twitter account, and that disappears. Now, I will actually get a second alert, and that's because I have email alerts set up within Twitter, so whenever someone sends me a mention, it'll send me an email as well. So because I've got notification set up on my Mac for emails, I should see an email alert come in as well. And there it is. Now you can see it's an email alert. It has the email or the mail app icon in the alert, and it is an alert, not a banner, because if you remember back, we configured emails to be alerts. So I need to either close this or open it. Let me go ahead and open it, and we should see that email within the mailbox. And there it is. Right, let me just pop mail out of the way, and let me just send one more tweet from another machine. I'll send a direct message this time to my SEO Demo account, and so consequently we should see again another banner from Tweetbot, and then we should see another email alert come in as well. So let me just go ahead and send that. Okay, so the direct message has been sent. Give it a few seconds and we should see the banner. There we go. And then a few more seconds and we should see the email alert. And there we go. There's our email alert. Okay, let me just close that down. Now, if we go across to the notification panel, you'll see we have a new section in there for Tweetbot. The 2 alerts, I'm getting it all alerted out, and the initial testing one. I can close all those down by tapping on this X, and that will remove them for me. While we're here, actually, if I go into the notifications panel itself and scroll down, yep, there's a new entry there for Tweetbot. So currently Tweetbot is set for banners. I could switch it to be alerts, or I could switch them off if I wanted to. Now, one thing you have to bear in mind is, you need to be a little bit careful about the number of alerts that you set up. You obviously don't want to be swamped with alerts. There are some nice features in Mountain Lion that sort of help you in that respect. One is if you're actually giving a presentation, if you're using Keynote or if your display is mirrored to an external monitor, that will temporarily suspend the alert system, so you won't get notifications popping up while you're giving a presentation. Really nice feature. But you might want to switch things off manually, and there are different ways to do that. One way, if I just get rid of that, if I go into the notifications panel again, if I swipe across, and then in the notifications panel, if I actually scroll down, you'll see up at the top, show alerts and banners. I can switch that off. And that will give me 24-hour respite from any alerts and banners. As you can see, they will resume tomorrow. So let's switch that back on again. Another option, if I close the panel, if I go to the icon itself, hold down the Alt or Option key and click, that will disable the alerts for me as well. So I won't get any new alerts or notifications while that is disabled. To bring it back on again, Alt or Option, click, and that's sorted. So that's the notification system. As I said earlier on, we will see more applications making use of notifications. And again, they don't necessarily have to come from the Mac App Store. Only those that use iCloud-based notifications will need to come from the Mac App Store. But any third-party app can actually write alerts and post them into notifications. Let's have a look at another new feature within Mountain Lion, and that's Gatekeeper. Gatekeeper is a new security measure introduced with Mountain Lion, and basically it's designed to stop any malicious third-party applications running on your Mac. Now, this is an optional service and has 3 different levels of security, but by default, Mountain Lion is installed with the middle level of security, and it's something you might want to consider whether or not you need to change it. Now, let's first take a look at Gatekeeper. It's actually in System Preferences, and if you go to Security and Privacy, this bottom section here under General, allow applications downloaded from either the Mac App Store, the Mac App Store and identified developers, or anywhere. Let me just click this lock to make changes. Now, the most secure or top level of security is just to allow applications downloaded from the Mac App Store to run. Now, the reason behind this is if you actually do download and install an application from the Mac App Store, it will have been checked by Apple, and you can be fairly confident that it doesn't contain any malicious code or any malware. The next level is applications downloaded from the Mac App Store and identified developers. Now, there are some applications that can't be sold via the Mac App Store for various reasons. One might be that it has hooks into the system that the Mac App Store guidelines don't allow, or it mightn't be able to be sandboxed because of the type of application it is. But it's actually been developed by identified Apple developers who have developer accounts. So Apple allow them to what's called code sign their applications. So the middle level of security is to allow applications downloaded from the Mac App Store and any of these code-signed applications. The code-signed applications aren't checked by Apple, but if later on it's discovered that there is malicious code or malware in a code-signed application, Apple can revoke the permission, and then if you have that installed on your machine, it will actually stop running and won't be able to damage your machine. So that's like the middle ground. The third option is to allow applications downloaded from anywhere to run, and that's pretty much as we were before. Now, when you installed Mountain Lion, if you did an upgrade, basically what it's done is to create what's called a whitelist of the applications installed on your machine. So you won't find any problems with previously installed applications on your Mac once you've installed Mountain Lion, even if they aren't code signed or if they've been downloaded from anywhere. Otherwise, I suppose, half your applications would stop running. But any new applications you download will take heed of your settings within Gatekeeper. So let me show you what that looks like. I've just downloaded and installed an application called Lilliput, which is an old application, but I use it now and again in my video encoding process. But I've just downloaded it from the developer's website and it's not code signed. So let's see what happens if I try to run that. So currently my settings are Mac App Store and identified developers. So we'll pop that down. Let's bring Finder up. Right, and this is Lilliput. It's an application from 2008. Tried and tested. I'm quite happy with the application. I've run it before on other machines. I have no real issues with Lilliput. It's just that it's an old app and it will never have been code signed. So if I try and run it, the first time I try and run it, Lilliput can't be opened because it's from an unidentified developer, and your security preferences allow installation of only apps from the Mac App Store and identified developers. It also tells you when it was downloaded. It was downloaded by Safari on the 26th of July. So we'll say OK. So I can't run it. So what am I to do? Well, I could do one of two things. I could go back to System Preferences and I could switch on anywhere. But once you've done that, basically you've disabled Gatekeeper, and you will invariably forget that you've switched on anywhere, but it sort of negates its entire use. Really you want to keep this middle ground on and not sort of disable Gatekeeper for the future. But they've given you a workaround. So if I close that down, if I go back to Lilliput, this time rather than just double clicking it to run it, if I control a right click and say open, we get a slightly different dialog box. So Lilliput is from an unidentified developer, so it's realized it isn't code signed, but it's allowing you to run it. Are you sure you want to open it? And opening Lilliput will always allow it to run on this Mac. Now, I'm perfectly happy with this application. In effect, what I'm going to do by clicking on open is adding it to the whitelist that Mountain Lion has created during the install process. So if I say open, there we go, it's run it for me. And then if I shut that down, run it again, it will just run it each time. And I haven't had to disable Gatekeeper. So that's just a sort of a workaround until more applications come on stream that have been code signed. And I really would say that, don't switch off the Gatekeeper setting. Just if you find an application won't run and you're happy with the application, you can control the right click and click on open and add it to your whitelist. So that will just keep you in good stead for the future. So that's Gatekeeper, part of Mountain Lion. In this section, I'm going to start off by taking a look at the basic levels of iCloud integration. Now, with Mountain Lion, OS X has finally joined the party and is on the same footing as all your iOS devices in that it can now save documents into iCloud. Now, to do this, you do need to have an iCloud account, obviously, And during the installation process, you probably have already given in your iCloud credentials. But if we go into System Preferences again, and under iCloud, you'll see I've already added my iCloud details into Mountain Lion. The thing you need to have switched on is this Documents and Data. If this isn't switched on, the bits I'm going to show you now won't actually work. If you haven't got an iCloud account, I would strongly suggest you get one. You can get a free one. You get up to 5 gigabytes of storage in the cloud. Well worth having. In fact, Mountain Lion and your iOS devices, you really do need an iCloud account to work properly. But anyway, we've got our iCloud account. We've got Documents and Data switched on in System Preferences. So what I'm going to do first is open up an existing application, TextEdit, and you'll see quite a significant difference. So if I go in and open TextEdit, right, we get a brand new open dialog box. Now this shows me by default all my documents in iCloud. And at the moment, I haven't got any TextEdit documents saved in iCloud, so it's not showing me any. Thing to bear in mind, a couple of core concepts you need to understand. Each application that supports iCloud has a separate file area in the cloud. So when I open this panel, I would only see my TextEdit documents. If I opened another application, say for instance Pages, which has now got iCloud support, I would only see my Pages documents actually in the cloud from this point. So that's just one thing to bear in mind. Everything is sort of segmented and separated in the cloud. And your iCloud enabled applications will only be able to see those documents that are associated with that particular application. Now, saying that, if I want to see something on my Mac, you'll see there's another option here. We have iCloud by default. On my Mac, gives me a standard open dialog box. So I can actually go ahead here and navigate through to my documents folder. I've got some text files in there that I could open if I wanted to. Let's go back to iCloud. Now, iCloud usage is entirely optional. You can switch and toggle between your Mac, your local files on your Mac and iCloud at will. You can even drag files from iCloud onto your Mac and from your Mac to iCloud as well, all through this dialog box. But we'll take a look in a bit more detail once I've created some documents and saved them in the cloud. The thing is, though, with this dialog box is this is really just an open dialog box. You can select between iCloud and on my Mac. If you want to create a new document, there is a button for that. But to be honest, you don't need to worry about where you're going to save it. The saving is a separate process. So at this point, it doesn't matter if you're looking at iCloud or on my Mac. Basically, you're just going to create a new document and then we worry about where we save it later. So don't fret at this particular point. This is really just an open dialog box. If you create a new document, it can be either iCloud or on my Mac. You determine where you save it when you save it. So let's go ahead and say new document. Okay, so that's my new document. Let me go ahead and enter some text. Okay, so that's my sample document. So now I'm going to save it, and it's at this point I decide to want to save it locally or to iCloud. Now I will do a completely separate section on file saving because there are some changes. Good old file save as is back, but I'll do that after this iCloud section. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say file save. Okay, and we get the standard dialog box. Now this is the simplified dialog box. Save as untitled. Well, let's give it a name. Random text. Now by default, Apple is prompting us to save it in iCloud. You'll notice as well that there is no, I can't actually expand this dialog box. The control that normally gives me the extended dialog box to save it somewhere won't allow me to do that. It just gives me one option for iCloud. If I want to save it locally, if I select here, I've now got options to save it to my MacBook Pro, to all my favorites and recent places as well. At this point, if I was to say desktop and then wanted to navigate, I can now click on this button and I can now navigate around my Mac. But what I will do, though, is rather than that, I will say iCloud. Again, nice simple box, and save. Okay, let's close that down. And let's do a file open. And there's our new open dialog box. And as you can see, under iCloud now, I have my random text document. So I can select that and double tap, and it would actually open up for me. I can actually use Quick Look from here as well. So if I hit spacebar, you can see I can see the contents of my text document up in iCloud. I've also got, and this is new for Quick Look, the ability to share. So I can email it, I can message it, or I can airdrop it to another local Mac. But again, we'll look at sharing in a separate section. Let me close down Quick Look. Now, another type of view is a list view. So I've got a list view there. Let's go back to icon view. Let's create another new document, actually. Okay, just some more text. Let's close that down. Where do you want to save it? We're going to save it in iCloud again. Let's call this another document. We'll save. Do file open. And there's my another document. Again, quick look to have a look at it. There's my random text. Let's just create one more. Yet another document. Again, close it down. We'll save it in iCloud. Yet another document and save. Okay, let's do a file open. So we now have 3 documents. Thing to point out here as well is that because these are in iCloud, if I have another Mac, these documents will appear on my other Mac. So if I have a laptop and an iMac, I can now go across to my iMac. This is on my laptop. I could go across to my iMac, open up TextEdit, and within the iCloud panel, providing that I'm in the same iCloud account on the second Mac, these documents would appear and I can actually open them on the other document, make a change, and those changes will be reflected across iCloud, and I can pick them up on this Mac as well. Very useful. Now, if I was to go across to my iPad or iPhone, obviously there is no equivalent to TextEdit, but if it was Pages or Keynote or some other applications that do exist on both iOS and the Mac, I would be able to see them across both platforms. Let me just show you a couple of file handling capabilities of this new dialog box. If I want to create a folder, it's basically a matter of just dragging an icon on top of another icon, and now we have a folder. You've probably seen this before if you're an iOS user. Very similar, in fact identical to iOS folders. I can tap on here, give it a name, test folder, hit return, tap away so I can just see this folder and my single document. Now you can't nest folders. I can't create a complex hierarchy of folders. They're only sort of single level folders. But if I now take a look at the list view, you'll see I've got my single random text document, and then I've got this disclosure triangle which will open up my test folder. Let's go back to icon view. I've got a search panel here, so I can search for documents within iCloud, and I can also do one other thing as well, which is to drag this out of iCloud onto my desktop. So are you sure you want to move random text from iCloud? Moving the item out of an iCloud library will also delete it from your other synced iCloud devices. So we'll say move. Right, so that's now out of iCloud. So on my second Mac, I can't see that file now. That's stored locally here on my Mac. I can open it up in Quick Look. I can open it in TextEdit, edit it, save it, and that's saved locally to my Mac. If I want to put it back in iCloud, file open, drag it from a desktop back to this library. You see it's waiting. Right, it's uploaded. It's now available through the iCloud library, and other Macs can now get to this document as well. One other control I haven't mentioned, actually, if I select that document, you'll see here we also have a sharing option. So again, I can share my document via email, via message, or via AirDrop. Let me just create one more new document. Okay, and let's close this down. We'll get the save dialog. Now it's asking for iCloud, but if I click, you'll notice that I could also save it directly into the test folder in iCloud as well if I wanted to. So not just at the root level, but I can access the folders I've made through the iCloud library dialog box. Let me just save it to iCloud directly. Give this another name. We'll save. If I do a file open. Okay, there's my test doc. I can drag that onto here to create another folder. We'll just leave that as folder. If I try and drag that onto another folder, you'll see you can't actually do that. Now, if you want to delete these folders, what you have to do is open the folder up, move the documents out, or delete the documents. You can actually command backspace to delete a document. Now, to actually delete the folder, if we click away, the only way I've found is to actually drag down so that the folder is highlighted, and then command backspace. We'll say delete, and that's now gone. Now, just to finish off this section, let's have a look at an application that does have iCloud support across both devices. Let's have a very quick look at Keynote. Okay, so this is my iPad. If I just go into Keynote, you'll see there's just the one presentation. It's the one that's supplied with Keynote itself, the Getting Started presentation, but no other ones in iCloud. So let me move that out of the way. Let me run Keynote. So this is now on the Mac. We get the new iCloud library dialog box. There are no current Keynote presentations in iCloud, so let's go ahead and create a new document. We'll use the white one. I'll leave it at iPad size, 1024 by 768. We'll say choose. Let's give this a title. Okay, let's add a new page. Let's choose so one of these photos vertical. Got a test. Okay, we'll close that down. Would we want to save it? We'll save it as my presentation in iCloud. Okay, and if I actually bring the iPad back on screen, you'll see straight away it's actually being uploaded to my iPad. And there we go, my presentation today. If I open this now, right, it does warn you the presentation may look different on your iOS device. This is because really if you're going to create presentations using iCloud, it's always best to create them on the iPad first. And that just ensures that you have all the fonts required installed on both devices. But I'm just going to go ahead, rather than open copy, I'm just going to say open. Right, need to download the theme images, that's fine, we'll say download. Okay, and there's my 2-page presentation. If I tap on the second page, there's the photo. Let's add a third page. And that nice big photo there. Okay, that's fine. If I go back to presentations, and let's actually, you'll see it uploading now to iCloud. Let's wait till that completes. Okay, if I come out of Keynote, move my iPad out of the way, go back into Keynote. All right, so there's my iCloud presentation. If I open that, and there we go, there's the first and second page I created on my Mac, and there's the third page that I added in on my iPad. Now, I can well imagine Apple are working on a more unified version of iWork that sort of takes away some of the incompatibilities between the iPad and the Mac version. But as it stands, it's a perfectly workable solution, and it's really good to see iCloud come to the Mac. Other applications are following suit. 2 that spring to mind I've got installed on this machine. One is IA Writer. You can see there's a standard. In fact, let me pop Keynote out of the way. There's the standard iCloud library. I've got 2 documents in there from back in November when I did the show about IA Writer. So let's cancel that. Another one I've got is Byword as well. That's fully enabled for iCloud. And again, no documents in here as yet on this particular account. But it's inevitable you'll see more and more documents going across to the iCloud model. Now, I think it's fair to say that in Lion, the 2 most unliked aspects of Lion were the file locking and the removal of the file save as feature. Well, in Mountain Lion, file locking has gone and file save as is back. Well, sort of. First off, let's create a new document and have a look at the changes to the file saving system. So if I go into text edit, and what I'm going to do is create a new document. Now we have this new iCloud open dialog box, but again, as I mentioned in the first episode, you really don't need to worry about where you're going to save your document. Just go straight to the new document button and select new document. Okay, let me paste in some text. So now I have some text in my document. Let's explore the file menu. So if I go up to file, obviously we can still close and save from here. So if I just save the document, it's currently untitled. So let's save it. Standard dialog box. And as we saw before looking at iCloud, I can save it to iCloud or I can save it locally. I'm just going to save it to my documents folder. And let's give it a name. My new report and save. Okay, and we can see in the header of the document that is now my new report. Right, back to the file menu. So we have, we still have duplicate. In fact, it's slightly different. If I select duplicate, what happens is it creates a duplicate of the document, but you'll see in the header of the document, we can actually rename it in place. Now, the title is currently my new report copy. If I want to rename that as something else, I can just overtype that. My updated report. Let's close that down. Again, back to file. Now I can rename the original. So if I click on rename, I get the option to rename in place. Again, the header bar, the title in the header bar becomes editable. So let me just change this. Hit return, right, and that's now renamed. And it's renamed in place as well, so it's still in the same folder. I saved it in the documents folder, so it still should be in the documents folder. In fact, let me go across to the Finder. Do a Command N to bring up a new Finder window. Go to my documents folder. Okay, so there's the initial draft. That's the document I've just renamed. And there's my updated report. That's the document I duplicated. So we'll pop that down. Other things we can do, if I go to File, I can move to, so if I want to move it, well, either to iCloud or to another folder, I can do it from here. So if I select the drop-down list, so I can move it to iCloud, I can move it to the test folder I created in iCloud, to my favorites, to devices, recent places, and other will just bring up a standard dialog box allowing me to navigate my local file system. So I can actually move it from there. So we'll cancel that. Back to the file menu, export as PDF. Now I can revert to, and I have a browse all versions option, and this just kicks in the versioning within Mountain Lion. You'll see I haven't actually saved any versions. This is a new document, but if it's a document you're working on continuously, versions will work in the background and enable you to save copies of your document so you can go back in and retrieve previous versions. But I'm just going to say done to that, because I haven't any previous versions at the moment. In fact, let's save a couple of versions. I can do a file save, or Command S, that will save a version. I can also come down here, let's just copy a paragraph, Command C and Command V. Right, you'll see at the top it's been edited, so if I do Command S again to save, that's another version that we have. Let's just create one more version. Again, I'll copy 2 paragraphs, Command C, and paste that in at the bottom with a Command V. Again, the document header shows me it's been edited and not saved, although it will auto-save in the background. But just to speed things up, I'm going to Command S, and that's now saved. Now, if I go back to the File menu and revert to, back to Browse All Versions, right, we can now see the previous versions of the document that I've been editing. And I can go back, say I wanted to go back to that one there, just say Restore, and that takes me back to that initial version. Okay, and they're the basic options within the File menu, but where is File Save As? Well, File Save As is currently hidden. All you need to do is just press down the Alt or Option key, and you'll see magically Save As appears in the menu. So now if I select Save As, I still have my Alt or Option key held down. You'll see the keyboard shortcut here is Alt or Option Shift Command S. Select that, and then we get the good old Save As dialog box, exactly as it was before, prior to Lion. So I can navigate my local file system, I can give it a new name at this point, and then hit save, and I have File Save As. And I'm sure that's pleased a lot of people. I know a lot of people would still like to see the File Save As option as default in the menu. Again, don't forget you have to hold down the Alt or Option key. You can actually do that. There's a couple of things you can do. In fact, let me show you how you can set it up so that, well, duplicate will disappear and File Save As will appear in your file menu. So, to do this, we need to set up some custom keyboard shortcuts. So if I go to System Preferences, and then System Preferences, I go to Keyboard. Keyboard Shortcuts, I want to go to Application Shortcuts. Hit the plus button. So under All Applications, the menu title I want to be Duplicate. And the keyboard shortcut I want to be Option, Shift, Command, and S. I will say Add. And again, another one. It's going to be Save As. And then 3 dots. And this keyboard shortcut, I want to be Shift, Command, and S. And Add. So basically we've remapped both the duplicate command and also the save as command. So now with any luck, if I pop this down, go to here, click on File, and there we go. We now have duplicate has disappeared and save as is now appearing. So I can use Command Shift S to save as. If you do want to use the duplicate command, if you use the Alt key now, you'll see the duplicate entry appears. But by default, save as appears. And that pretty much resets everything back to the way that it was pre-Lion. And as I mentioned, should please a lot of people. Okay, so that's the save as command. There are some further file handling commands that you can get to from the header of the document itself. Now, as we mouse over the document, you'll see we get this little disclosure triangle. I can click on there, so I can now rename in place. And again, I can do that from the header. I won't rename it for now. I can move it to iCloud from here. So let's do that. Let's move to iCloud. Are you sure you want to move this initial draft on this Mac to iCloud? We'll say Move Document. And that is now in iCloud. The way you can tell, by the way, if you're not sure whether it's a local copy or an iCloud document, is to go to the icon and then Control or right click on the icon. And you can see here the path to where the document is. So it's currently in iCloud, and it's called initial draft. If it's a local file, in fact, let me open a local file. File, open recent, my first novel. I know that is a local file, but again, if I control or right click on the icon, I can actually see the full path. So it's on my MacBook Pro, the hard drive, users, screencast online, documents, tidy, my first novel. So that's just a quick way of determining if it's an iCloud document or a local document. But back to the disclosure triangle, move to we've looked at, I can duplicate from here. I can lock the file if I want to, so the auto locking isn't in place, but you can manually lock a file if you want. And again, an option to browse all versions. Okay, so some nice changes. It's nice to know that Apple have actually listened to the users, and they've brought some features back. Sort of not obviously, but enough so that we can configure it as we want. But that's the revised file saving in Mountain Lion. Another feature that's now in OS X that originally appeared in iOS 5, is the deep integration with various services, various social media services. Now, initially it's Twitter and Flickr, but Facebook should arrive in the autumn, so we should see deep integration with Facebook. And we've touched on the sharing options, but you need to set up your accounts before you can actually use the sharing options dotted throughout the system. And the way you do that is actually, it's fairly hidden. It's in System Preferences, but it's actually under Mail, Contacts, and Calendars. So if we go in there, currently I just have my iCloud email set up. Now from here, as you might expect, you've got options to set up Exchange, Gmail, Yahoo, AOL, but down here we have Twitter, Vimeo, and Flickr. Now if you want to add additional services, if we go to add other accounts, if you have specific mail accounts that aren't shown in this list, or messages accounts, CalDAV accounts, etc., you can set them up in here. But I'm just going to go ahead and set up, well, let's set up my Twitter integration. And very simple to do. If I select Twitter, give it my username and my password. Let's sign in. So now OS X knows my Twitter credentials, and all the share options dotted throughout the system will now enable me to share with Twitter. It's also possible to update your contacts at this particular point, and Twitter will use, as you can see, use your email addresses and phone numbers from your contacts to add Twitter usernames and photos to your contact cards. So basically it's going to populate your contacts with their Twitter usernames and any photos in the avatars that they might have. So we'll say, okay, we'll update contacts. Right, it's updated 7 contacts, which is fine. Now let's add an additional service. Now I have a Flickr account. One notable absence from the list actually is YouTube. I'm quite surprised they haven't included YouTube in this list. Vimeo is a great video sharing service, but no YouTube. But anyway, I have a Flickr account. So if I go to Flickr, you can sign in using your Flickr credentials. People sometimes have a Yahoo ID. I actually use my Facebook ID for Flickr. And we'll say next. And we should now have to sign into Facebook. And that's got it. Okay. So I can actually change my description here if I want to, but I'll leave it as is. And that's all the services that I'll put in for now. As I say, Vimeo is a nice service if you want to add that in as well. But let's close that down. Okay, so where does this integration appear? Well, one of the places it appears is in our Notification Center. If I open up Notification Center, you'll see here I've currently got the alerts and banners switched off so they don't interrupt the screencast. But we have a new entry here, click to tweet. So if I tap on there, I now get this tweet sheet, so I can fill it in. So no need to have a Twitter client on your machine. You can do it directly from OS X. And we'll just say send. So let's close that down. Other places, well, quick look. Let me go into the Finder. Right, so we've got some images here, some screenshots. Let's say I wanted to send that to Twitter. All I would do is spacebar, and then I have the sharing option here. I can email it, message, airdrop, send to Twitter. So that will be sent to Twitter as an attachment. Here's an interesting image, still testing. I could add my location at this point, but I won't do that. Let me just send that off. Okay, and I can also send this to Flickr. So give it a title. Let's give it a meaningful title. In fact, I might have sent this to Flickr before already on testing, so I'll give it a different name. So this is a slide I used in my paper iOS tutorial. We'll give it a tag, slides. Change the access permissions. So let's make it public, and let's say publish. And that's now sharing it and sending it off to Flickr. It gives us a link to the page on Flickr, and I can just click on the magnifying glass. That will open it in Safari. Let me just bring Safari to full screen. Close this down. Okay, so there's the slide that I've just published, paper slide. This is the slide I used in my paper iOS tutorial, and that's available for anyone to see. So I can actually now share this link with people. If people are subscribed to my Flickr feed, they can have a look at it. So really simple to sort of share content now with the world. It's very, very easy. Let's have a look at some other places where we can share. In fact, we can actually share here from Safari itself. So I can send a Twitter now about this particular web page. I will send that. Let's close Safari down. Right, we've sent it from Quick Look already. We can actually send it directly from the Finder. Let's find another one. Let's say let's say that image. You'll see we have a share button in the Finder, email, message, AirDrop, Twitter, and Flickr. So let's send that one to Flickr. We'll leave the description and tags off. We'll make it public again and publish. So really very, very easy to share pretty much from anywhere, and you'll find more and more share buttons from various third-party applications once people start to integrate this functionality with their applications. But there we go. Let's have another look at Flickr. Tap on there. And there we go. Right, this is only a small image. If we look back, yeah, it was only a thumbnail image of 183 pixels by 137, but works great with any size image. Another feature that OS X has now inherited from iOS is inbuilt dictation. Now, I should really start this section off by saying what it isn't rather than what it is. It's not a replacement for a sort of professional dictation package such as Drag and Dictate by Nuance. It's meant really for very short, probably less than 30-second snippets of text that you want to enter into basically any text field. It's also a feature that will only work when you have an internet connection, because it does transfer data from your Mac to Apple servers, translates the spoken word, and brings back the text. So you do need an internet connection for it to work properly. But let's go ahead and set it up, and I'll show you. It's very easy to use. First off, if we go to System Preferences, and under System Preferences, we have Dictation and Speech. Now, it's currently switched off. You'll notice we have a microphone symbol here. If you click on this disclosure triangle, you can select any of the microphones that are connected to your machine. So the internal mic, I've got a couple of Thunderbolt monitors, so it'll pick up the mics off the monitors as well. This is my USB connection, or rather the mic that's connected via USB that I'm using to record the screencast. So I'm going to select this one because that's going to be the one that's the clearest for you. It does do some clever tricks, such as if you're using iTunes, it will pause iTunes. If the fans are going on your Mac, it will actually stop the fans while you're dictating. But let's go ahead and switch this on. Okay, so when you dictate text, what you say is sent to Apple to be converted to text. And to help your Mac recognize what you're saying, other information is sent as well, such as your contacts. So potentially a privacy issue there, but I'm going to go ahead and say enable dictation. Now you need to specify a shortcut key. Now by default, it prompts you to press the function key twice. You can select the right command key, the left command key, or either command key twice, but I'm going to leave it with the function key and the language. Again, these look to be the same languages that Siri uses. So it's probably using the Siri backend that it's already got in place for iOS. Okay, so basically that's it. It's set up. There's no training like a proper dictation package that does the processing locally to the machine. You normally have to train your voice. There's none of that with dictation. It's basically just away we go. So let's go back to text edit. Let's do a new document. And let's try some dictation. So basically all I need to do is tap the function key twice and then just speak. So here we go. This is just some sample dictation, full stop, new paragraph. I hope it works really well, full stop. Okay, now to close or to stop the dictation, I just press the function key once. You can actually hit the enter key as well, and that will stop the dictation. If you want to abort that particular session, you can hit spacebar or escape. But as you can see, that seemed to have worked really well. In fact, I was experimenting. Let's see if this is going to work in real life. I like Mary Poppins singing Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. Pretty impressive. Now, because it's integrated system-wide, you can basically use dictation in any text field that will accept a text input. So, for instance, if you wanted to do a quick tweet, I could just go into Notification Center, click to tweet, hit the function key twice. Just testing dictation via tweet. Right, I made a mistake there, so I just hit the escape key. Let me try that again. Testing sending a tweet in Notification Center. And then click send. And we'll close that down. So that's dictation. It works really well. I found it at least to work really well. It does help if you speak slowly and clearly and you sort of properly enunciate what it is you're saying. But with a bit of practice, I think another thing as well is trying to think what you're going to say before you say it. That's quite difficult to do. And I used to find that problem with the more comprehensive dictation packages. But because dictation in Mountain Lion only will process small chunks, it does sort of teach you to think about the next sentence that you're going to say, and it's actually easier doing it that way, I find. But anyway, that's dictation in Mountain Lion, and I would suggest you give it a go and see what you think. Now, Apple have introduced Safari 6 in Mountain Lion, and a couple of new features in Safari. The major one, I suppose, that everyone's eye is drawn to is the removal of the search bar. So there is no separate search bar and URL bar anymore. It's a single combined sort of unified search and URL entry panel. So if I click here where it says apple.com, I can either type in a search query or an actual URL. So let's type in a search query. Just type in screencasts online. Now, I've actually used this machine before and I've already entered screencastsonline.com. So you'll see my top hit is screencastsonline.com. Below that is a Google search. So it's saying screenshot Mac, screenshot, screen capture, and then down into our bookmarks and history. So I can go straight to here. In fact, let me type something else in. If I backspace, something I've not searched for on here. There we go, Tivoli. So a Google search, I've got Tivoli, Tivoli Village, Tivoli Theatre, Tivoli Gardens. Go with Tivoli Gardens, and that gives me a standard Google search. If I know the URL of somewhere I want to go to, www.themacscreencastguy. Hit return. That'll actually take me to that URL. So it takes a little bit of getting used to, but you'd be surprised at how quickly you become accustomed to using the unified search and URL panel. Now, another new feature is that the reader tool is now permanently displayed. It's just grayed out when it's not active. Reader is the built-in functionality within Safari that allows you to sort of remove all the advertisements and just concentrate on the content of the web page. So if I go, say, to one of the news sites, let's go to BBC. Let's say this Greenwich revels in Olympic makeover. See lots of clutter on that particular page. If you want to see just the text, you'll see Reader is now in blue. I can actually click that and just see the body of the text with some of the graphics. Very nice feature. But that's permanently on display now. It just used to appear when a page was able to be read by Reader. But just tap that off. A refresh button to reload the current page. Another big change is the use of tabs. If I open another tab, so if I do a Command T, you'll see that the tabs now are stretched for the entire width of the page. So there are two tabs open, so each one is roughly half the size of the page. If I do another tab, so rather than Command Tab, let me just hit this plus button here. So that's another top sites view. Let's go to Daring Fireball. Okay, 3 tabs, each one about a third of the width of the page. Another new feature when we're looking at tabs is this new view here. You'll see an icon. It looks a bit like CoverFlow. If I tap on there, we actually get this tab view now. I can use 2 fingers just to swipe between the tabs. So if I wanted to go back to this one, tap on it, pops back up. I can also use a 2-finger pinch to go into that same view. So if I do a 2-finger pinch, we go back into the tab view. And expand 2 fingers, and that pops back up. Now, we've already taken a look at the sharing option. So there's a button here. I can add this to my reading list. I can add a bookmark, email this page, message or Twitter the page. But next to that is a brand new icon, and this allows us to show iCloud tabs. Now, iCloud tabs is a great new feature that allows you to sort of share your open tabs with different iOS and Macs that all share the same iCloud ID. So let's say you have a Mac Pro at one location, you have your laptop, you have an iOS device as well. Now, to be honest though, this won't actually happen on iOS until version 6, iOS 6, which is out in the autumn. But in Mountain Lion, this is working already. So basically, let's say I'm on my laptop, I know that on my Mac Pro I was browsing, and there was a particularly interesting article that I'd left open in one of my tabs. I can't remember what it was though. All I need to do is go to here, click on there, and I can see straight away on my Study Mac Pro I was reading Lion, Wikipedia article, and also some information about Photoshop by Matt Gemmell. So if I want to have a look at that, and I can carry on reading from here, that will actually open it up directly for me. Just out of interest, let me just go across. In fact, let me see. I've got top sites. Let me close this one down. Let me go back to the BBC News site. Let's go back to, that's changed. Let's try another story about Olympic venue seating. Okay, so I've got those two tabs. Let's open another tab. Command T. Let's open Screencasts Online. So here on my laptop, I've got three tabs. I've got the BBC News site, I've got Daring Fireball and Screencasts Online. And in my iCloud tabs, on the other machine, I can see Lion and the Matt Gemmell article. So what I'm going to do, let me just pop across to, let's have a look, Finder. And there's the machine over there. I'm going to do a share screen. Now, I've already connected to this machine as ARD user, so it's actually giving me the chance now to either share the display. I'm currently logged in on that machine as the Screencast Online user, but I can log in now as a different user without interrupting Screencast Online and view the desktop. So I'm going to actually go ahead and share display. Okay, so this is over on the Study Mac Pro. If I now go into Safari, in fact, it's minimized down here. So this is the remote machine. So there are the two tabs that I saw. I've got the Wikipedia tab and the Matt Gemmell article. Now, if I go to iCloud tabs on this machine, there we go, I can see the BBC News site, Daring Fireball, and Screencast Online. So that remote machine can see the same tabs that I have open on my local machine. Okay, very neat. And again, on here, if I wanted to go to the same BBC News article on my remote machine, click on there, and that would open the page for me. Okay, let's pop that down for now. I'll keep that connection open, but let's just pop that down for now. So we're back on our local machine. Another option now is reading lists. Now, we did have reading lists before, but the nice thing with reading lists now is that they do synchronize across OS X and when iOS 6 comes out across your iOS devices, but also it does support offline reading now as well, so that if you do want to save something for offline reading, you can do. So if I go to this Daring Fireball article, let's click on there, which takes me to a New York Times article that perhaps I want to read later. I'll just say add page. Okay, so you can see saving for offline reading. Let's go to another BBC page. The India power grid crisis. Right, I'm going to add that page as well. Again, saving for offline reading. Okay, so that's my reading list over here on Safari on my local machine setup. If I go back to screen sharing and go to reading list on here. Now, what I've noticed, it's a little bit of a bug actually, in that the synchronization doesn't happen straight away. And if you don't add anything into your reading list on your other machine, for some reason the synchronization doesn't occur. So the way to get around that, let's just find another page on here. Right, let's add this page to our reading list on the remote machine. Okay, so that's the one we've added from this side. And there we go. There's the two on my reading list on my local machine are now being synchronized with this particular remote machine. So you can now add pages to your reading lists on any machine that uses the same iCloud account, and eventually they will be synchronized across all your machines. You just need to make that first entry in your reading list, and then everything then seems to sort itself out. Maybe that one's saving for offline reading, and again, the last one is also saving for offline reading. Okay, that's all done. And as I say, come iOS 6 in the autumn, they will also be replicated across to your iPad or your iPhone. Okay, I'm going to close down that remote connection now, and I'm back on my local machine. Now, just one other thing to do with Safari before we finish this section, and that's if you're a 1Password user. Let me get rid of my reading list, go back to the home page. If you're a 1Password user, there is a 1Password extension that will go into Safari and you can use 1Password. But for some reason, they've switched on Safari password caching by default, even if you had it switched off before. So if you go to Safari Preferences, and then under Autofill, just uncheck that. And then it will stop prompting you to save passwords if you're trying to use 1Password as well. And I tend just to rely on 1Password for my password collection. So it did trouble me for a few days until I realized this was switched on. So just switch it off and just use 1Password if you're a 1Password user. A couple of other things in here as well, actually. Let me just show you. If you do switch on password saving, they will appear in here. But to do with privacy, here we go. This is a new option. Ask websites not to track me. So you can actually switch that for a bit more privacy. And also notifications is new. So certain websites can be granted permission to send alerts to Notification Center. I think the only one, well, in fact, the only one I'm aware of at the moment is gmail.com. That will allow Gmail alerts to be sent into Notification Center. But I would imagine over time, more websites will become sort of Notification Center aware. So that might be something that you need to have a look at. Okay, so that pretty much wraps up all the new features in the new Safari 6. Now, we took a quick look at Mail in the Notification Center section, and to be honest, there's not really that much that is new in Mail on Mountain Lion. We have our standard, well, this is the standard 2-pane view. I can see my mailboxes over on the side. I suppose the biggest change really is the introduction of VIPs. Now, VIPs are, as you might imagine, very important people, and it's a way really of flagging mail from certain people that you want to make sure that you actually deal with. Very easy to set up a VIP. So if I wanted Don McAllister to be a VIP, you can either just tap the star next to the name, or you can click and say add to VIPs. Now, once you do that, you get a new section under mailboxes called VIPs, and there is my VIP Don McAllister, and there's all the mail that he sent me, and I can have a look through. You can take it one level further. You can actually configure notifications just to notify you when VIP mails come in. In the previous Notification Center section, we had all our emails coming into the inbox appearing as notifications. Now, that's probably not a good idea, and the notification service is better if you're a bit more selective about what actually gets notified. So how do we set this up? Well, first, let's go into Notification Center. So if I do a 2-finger swipe from the edge of my trackpad down to this icon at the bottom, into my notifications configuration panel, and I want mail. So because we're going to set these up for VIPs, I don't really want them as banners, because banners are transient. They will appear and disappear. I want them as alerts, so they'll stick on screen once an email comes in from a VIP. Okay, so that's fine. Well, I already have a VIP set up, so I don't have to do that. You can set up additional VIPs, and all those mails from those individuals will appear as notifications. But the other thing you need to do is under Mail Preferences, and under New Message Notifications, we had it set up to inbox only, so I can now set it up for VIPs, contacts, or mailboxes, or today. So I'm going to go with VIPs. Okay, now to test this, what I'm going to do, let's go back to the inbox. I'm going to send an email from one of my Gmail accounts, and that should just appear in my inbox with no notification, and then I'll send another one from Don McAllister, and we should see that come through. So let me go across to another machine and set that up. So, ready to go. If I just send from a Gmail to begin with. So we should see that come in. Switch across to mail. There we go, message from, well, it's actually from Don McAllister, but that's from my screencastonline at Gmail account. Okay, screencastonline at Gmail. So we haven't set that up as a VIP, that particular email address, although it's the same name. Probably not a good choice. But yeah, no notifications in there. So if I go across to my other account and send that off. There's test from Don McAllister. We've got the blue star, shows that it's from a VIP, and we've got the alert up at the top, Don McAllister star, test from Don McAllister, very important email. Now the only difference between these two emails are the original or the originating email address. The bottom one is from gmail.com, but the top one is from my iCloud account, which is the one I've set up as a VIP email address. But the beauty of this is that it's an alert. It will remain on screen until I either close it or open the email and action it. So now, if I go across here, I can open it from here, take me straight to the message. So if you are sort of at the behest of various people, perhaps you might want to put your boss in as a VIP or other family members as VIPs. You can easily spot the emails from them when they come in. Now, just one tiny other little tip you can use with mail, and to be honest, I'm not even sure if this is new with Mountain Lion, but it's only something I discovered quite recently. If you're traversing a large mailbox, let's say I want to go to my archive mailbox, and I've got tons and tons of emails in there, and I'm sort of down at the bottom after searching for something. If I want to get back up to the top, similar to iOS, if you go up to the top of the column, see where it says sort by date, but just next to that and double tap or double click, that will actually take you right back up to the top of the list. As I say, just a minor little thing, but does make life a little bit easier. But that's pretty much the only major change within Mail. I'm sure there's lots of small tweaks under the hood, but that's the most significant change, and that's VIPs and integration with Notification Center. Okay, so starting to run a bit long again. I think we've got enough material for yet another show after this. So I'll just finish off with just a short segment. One that, just out of interest really, I'm not sure if you use it. I tend not to use Dashboard very much, but they have made some changes to Dashboard. If I just do a 4-finger swipe, brings Dashboard into view. Now the changes are, if I go to this plus button down here, we have this new grid layout, very similar to Launchpad, of all the available widgets that we can install on our dashboard. Now, for some reason, they've actually also allowed you to start managing these. So you can create folders of widgets. I can create, say, another folder there. I can click on the folder title and rename it. So very similar to iOS, you can now rearrange your widgets in this grid, but these are only available widgets. That does seem a little bit strange because I would have thought it might have been better to have the widgets sort of on the dashboard itself here, but these are just sort of standard layout. So a little bit puzzling why they've actually gone to the trouble of doing that for the available widgets. You can get more widgets, of course. You can go across to the Apple website. There's plenty more widgets for you to download if you want, but I just thought I'd point that rather strange implementation feature that they've incorporated into Mountain Lion. Now, before starting on some of the new content, I just want to revisit the file save as reintroduction that I mentioned in the last episode. It's been noted there's been a slight change or perhaps some unexpected behavior in file save as that you really need to be aware of. And thanks to John Masters for dropping me a note sort of explaining all this or pointing it out. Now, the thing to be wary of is if you do a file save as, what actually happens to the original document. Now, to demonstrate this, if I go into text edit and we'll create a brand new document, I'll just click on the new document button. Right, so here's our document. Let me just enter some text. Okay, so this is some content in my document. If I now save this, so if I do a Command S to save, it doesn't matter where we save it. Let's save it in iCloud. So I'll call this one version 1. And hit save. Right, so we've now got version 1.rtf. This is a rich text format file. And now if I go down and add an extra line, some additional content. Now you can see that it's currently edited, so I haven't saved that additional line, but let's say I now want to save it as another document. So if I do file save as, so file, now I've already set up a key combination to display save as permanently, but just check on the previous edition to see how to actually do that. But if I just go ahead and say file save as, now I'll call this version 2. Okay, we'll just hit save. Okay, so there's version 2. Now version 2 has got some additional content in. If I close that down and then go File, Open Recent, and open version 1, it's actually saved a copy of version 1. So it's added the second line into the original version, which I didn't really intend it to do. Now, you can get the original version back. It's just easy to go to the disclosure triangle, go to Browse All Versions. Okay, and there's our original version 1. I can just select that and restore. And that puts it back for me. But just be wary that if you do save a file, then make some changes, then do a file save as, those changes will appear both in the original document and also the new document as well. But just something to bear in mind. So let's now move on and have a look at some of the changes to the Finder. In all honesty, the Finder hasn't really changed that much in Mountain Lion since Lion, although I will go over some new features, but also some features that were first introduced with Lion for those people migrating across from Snow Leopard or earlier. Now, before you dismiss this section, I will include at the end a section on accessing your iCloud documents through the Finder. It's not going to be for everybody, but if you're used to the Finder and you want to be able to manipulate your iCloud documents in the Finder, I'll show you how you can do that. Now, one of the first things I would recommend that you would do on a default installation is to switch on two things. One is the path bar. So if I go to View and then Show Path Bar, you'll see down at the bottom, we get a full view of the path of the current folder. So we're currently highlighting the Documents folder, but I can see from the path bar that it's on my system drive under the folder Users, the user Screencast Online, and then Documents. And we can actually use this to navigate. So if I double tap on Screencast Online, it takes us back a level. So that can be quite useful. Also, I would say switch on the status bar. In its default view, it gives you a list of the number of items in the current folder that you're looking at, but also an indication of the amount of available disk space on that particular drive as well. Very useful. It's also very useful as well if you go into one of the views. Now, we have the standard views. We've got icon view, list view, column view, and cover flow view. But let's go to icon view, and let's go to my pictures folder. So there we go, pictures. Okay, so I've got 4 JPEGs in here. If I go into icon view in this particular folder, we now have a slider down here at the bottom, so I can expand the view of the photos and actually use them as a sort of a mini browser. So that's quite a useful feature. Now, list view is pretty much the same as it was before. You can click or tap on the column headers to change the sort order. You can also, especially in this picture folder, if you control or right click on the header, there are also 2 special attributes, dimensions, and then also, again, control or right click, resolution. So you can actually sort or identify your photos by the particular dimension or resolution of them. Let's go back across to my documents folder and go into this tidy up folder and to another level. I can do several things here. If I go down to the grab handle, control or right click, I get this pop-up menu. I can right size just this column, all columns individually, or all columns equally. If I go to right size all columns individually, you see I have 2 columns. The first one's of a similar width, but this one has got a document with a really long document name in, and that's expanded the column to show me the full document name. It's also possible to change the column width. If I just make this one shorter, or narrower rather, if I just double tap or double click on the grab handle, that will expand automatically. Now we've got cover flow view. Let's go back to our pictures folder and go into cover flow view. Again, not too sure how many people actually use cover flow view, but on images it's quite useful. You can actually just scroll through and see all your different images. What I will show you actually, if I go to this one here, if we go to the action menu. Now just a couple of things with the action menu. First thing is this duplicate command. You can duplicate a file and that will just create a copy of the file and assign the local file permissions that you have on the file. Duplicate exactly means it will copy the file permissions as well. So if you want an exact copy of the file with the same file permissions, use that particular option. Another thing here is get info. If you just select get info, basically the selected file, it will give you all the information about the file, but just that file. So if I now try and use the arrow keys to move down, it's sort of locked. I can't do anything. One useful tip when using the action menu, if I close that down, go to here, hold down the Alt key, you'll see rather than get info, we now get this show inspector. If I click on show inspector, now I use the down arrow, we'll actually get the get info panel remaining open, but it's giving me all the information about the different files as I scroll downwards and upwards using the arrow keys. Another option would be to close this particular one down, select all 4 files, and then control or right click and say get info, but then you do get 4 separate panels, but I suppose that's easy to compare them in a single view. Okay, let me close those down. Next to the action menu, we have the new item arrangement button. I think this came in with Lion. This allows you to change the item arrangement of the files on display. In fact, let me go across to, it's sometimes quite useful in conjunction with All My Files. And again, All My Files was a new feature brought in with Lion, I believe. That might have been earlier, not too sure. But you can see here, I've currently got, well, it's already switched on here. If I tap on here, yeah, it's arranged by size. So I can now see groupings of all my files sorted or arranged by size. So from 1 megabyte to 100 megabytes in the top band, 10 kilobytes to 1 megabyte, 100 bytes to 10 kilobytes. If I want to change that arrangement, let's say by application, okay, I can now see all those files created by byword, by iTunes, by Keynote, Excel, etc. If we just scroll down, actually, I'll just show you something else. Yeah, text edit. So these are the files created by text edit. You'll notice that version 1.rtf and version 2.rtf are included in this view. So you can get to your iCloud files through your All My Files entry on your Finder. So although the iCloud files are sort of siloed away from the Finder, you can still see them through the All My Files option. And there are the two text edit files that I created before and saved to iCloud. Now, one thing you need to be aware of is that when you are saving files to iCloud, they do actually get saved locally as well and then get transferred to iCloud. So you normally have a local copy, and that way when you're offline, you can still access all your files and folders. And then when you go back online, it will synchronize with iCloud. So just to prove that these are iCloud-based files, if I just double tap on one or double click on one to open it, say this version 1.rtf, right, it's open with text edit. And as I showed you in a previous episode, if we go up to the little proxy icon, do a control or right click, you'll see this is actually in iCloud. Okay, we'll talk more about accessing files through the Finder. There is an unsupported way of doing it as well, which you might find interesting. But we'll just finish off looking at the Finder. A couple of other new things. The icon next to the item arrangement, we have the share, so I can actually now send files directly from the Finder via email, message, or AirDrop. And the final thing we saw very early on in the introduction to Mountain Lion is the progress indicators. So if I go to my downloads folder, I've still got my install OS X Mountain Lion large file. If I copy that across to documents, now rather than move it, I'm going to copy it. So I'm going to hold down the Alt key, get the little green plus, let go. Oh, we've already got one there, we'll replace it. Yep, and there we see the progress bar in column view, and also in list view as well, we see the progress bar of the application being copied across, and also get the standard copy dialog as well. Okay, so that's some of the new features in the Finder. Now let's have a look at this optional configuration change with iCloud. And as I say, it's not for everybody. If you're quite happy with using iCloud and the standard open dialog boxes that it presents to you, that's fine. But you can actually get direct access to the iCloud versions of your files stored locally. And let me show you how to do that. So just to recap, if I open text edit, we get the standard new dialog box now, which is an open file dialog box that enables us to flip between the iCloud and also on my Mac. But these are the files that are contained within iCloud. Let me just move that over to the side. Also, if I open something like Pages, which is also iCloud enabled, again, we get another open dialog box. This time it's a Pages document, just a single document in there called Newsletter. Again, that resides on iCloud. I can still get to my files on my Mac, but Apple are sort of encouraging me to save documents to iCloud. But it is possible to see your local copies of these files very easily. If I cancel this and cancel that, let's go back to the Finder. Let's do a Command N to bring up a new Finder window. Now I need to go to my library, so go. Library is hidden by default, so hold down the Alt key and it miraculously appears. Library, there we go. Let's go into column view. Now under library, there is an option down here for mobile documents. And if we open that up, you'll see these are the containers, the folders that integrate with iCloud. So you'll notice that I have one here for Keynote, one for Mail, one for Notes, Pages, Preview, Text Edit. If I go in and open the Text Edit folder and into Documents, you'll see there's a document called Initial Draft, one called Random Text, Test Folder, and version 1 and version 2. And again, if I go back into Text Edit, you can actually see those files there. There we go, version 1 and version 2, Initial Draft, Test Folder, and Random Text. So if I cancel that, so these are the folders that integrate, or rather, these are the documents that integrate with iCloud. Now, again, looking back to a previous episode, I could take documents out of iCloud by dragging them out of the open dialog box. I can also do that here as well. I can drag them from this folder, let go, and we get the dialog box. Are you sure you want to remove version 2.rtf from iCloud? And we'll also delete it from all your other synced iCloud devices. If we say move, that is now on the desktop. And again, I can drag from the desktop, or from any folder basically, into this folder, and that will now be stored in iCloud. Okay, so you could navigate to the library every time if you wanted to, and then into mobile documents if it's a feature that you think you're going to make use of a lot. But to be honest, you can tell by the folder structure Apple doesn't really want you to do that. It's not made friendly or user-friendly folder names. It's quite easy to see which folder is which, but they are trying to discourage you from actually using this particular folder in your library structure. So sort of do it at your own risk, and things might change at the next release. But if you wanted to make use of it, what you could do, now you can't actually drag your mobile documents folder into your favorites. That won't work. So what you have to do is Control or right click, make alias, and that creates this alias here. Just drag that across to your favorites in the sidebar, and that gives you direct access to all your mobile documents. Okay, so I have experimented a little bit. You can't really access these through the standard file save dialog boxes, to be honest. You can only really access them through dragging and dropping files. But, if you're more familiar or you're happier using the Finder, that might be useful to you. I thought I'd include it out of interest more than anything, to be honest. But that's enough files and folders for now. And let's go ahead and take a look at some of the new applications within Mountain Lion. So let's take a look at the new Notes application. Now, Notes previously was in Mail, but Apple have extracted Notes into a separate application. And as usual with most of the Mountain Lion supplied applications from Apple, it is iCloud enabled. So once you create a note, let me just start it off by running it from Spotlight. Once you create a note within the Notes application on your Mac, it will be synchronized with iCloud and then available on your iOS devices. Now, on first running, it does prompt you for a new note, although I have noticed sometimes if you leave it at this point, that note will actually disappear. But let's go ahead and type our title for our note, and let's add some body text. Okay, so within the body of the note, you can add text, you can format text, as well as dragging in images as well. You can append images into your notes. A couple of things about the user interface here. First thing you immediately notice is this particular font. Uses a very stylized font, which a lot of people won't like. I know I don't. You can change the formatting of the note itself. You can change the text. You can bring up the standard font panel. There are only 3 options for the default font, though. So if I go to Format and Font, you'll see under Default Font, we've got Noteworthy, which is the current one, Marker Felt, or Helvetica. I'll go with Helvetica. Just makes it look a little bit cleaner. Okay, so that's our formatting for the default font. A quick word about the user interface. You'll see the note is sort of like a yellow lined pad with the skeuomorphic aspects. Again, we've got some torn paper up at the top there, which again does distract some people, but you can't switch that off, unfortunately. In the center panel, you get a list of your different notes. And down at the bottom, we get another button here. I can just click on the plus button to create a new note. And as you can see, it's created another entry in the center panel, which is a list of all my current notes. And because I've used Helvetica as the default font, the font of this new note is Helvetica. Now, as far as formatting the note itself, the body of the note, you can go to the Format menu. And under Font, you can see the default font. You can show the fonts as well, so get the standard font box up. So you can select any of your system fonts. If you want to highlight and change the format of that particular text, you can do bold, italic, underline, make it bigger, smaller, the usual stuff. You've also got options to align your text, to add lists, so bulleted lists, dashed lists, and numbered lists, and also to change the indentation as well. Other thing you can do, you can also organize your notes. Now you can see over on the far left-hand panel, these are actual folders. So what I can do within iCloud is I can tap on this little plus button, and I've created a new folder. So I can call this something, say work related. Okay, so there's my work related folder. If I go to all my iCloud notes and drag this one across to work related, that's now filed away in that particular folder. So there are all my iCloud notes, just a separate notes folder and then a work related folder as well. Now, just a couple of other icons down at the bottom. You can actually hide the folder list, so we can pop that away at will. And down here we can trash notes, and also we can email or message them directly from the Notes application. And as I say, the nice thing about this is it is synchronized with iCloud, so that the notes you create on your Mac do appear on your iOS device and vice versa. Oh, just one final thing to do with notes. You can sort of turn them into like sticky notes if you want. If you double tap or double click on the note, you'll see it pops out into this separate note. So let me go back to here, pop this out, go to all notes. Where's the other one? That one there. Double tap that one. There's my second note as well. So these are individual notes now separated out from the application. I can still edit them. And again, those changes will be synchronized with iCloud. To close them down, just tap on little red icon to close the notes, and they're now back within the application. Okay, so that's the Notes application. Reminders is another application that's made the transition across from iOS and is iCloud enabled so that any reminders you create on your Mac or your iOS device are interchangeable. Let's just run the application from the Spotlight command. There we go. So this is my Reminders application. A very simple, very basic application. It looks very similar, if not identical, to the application on iOS. You can do various things with the user interface. We can pop away the mini calendar. We can get rid of the sidebar if we want, just have the reminders themselves. Let's pop those back open. Now, within the sidebar, we have two lists. We have a home list and a work list, so it's possible to organize your reminders into various categories. Now, to create a new list, basically you would hit this plus button here, and that gives you a new list. We can rename it, say shopping. Now, to create a new reminder within the list, we can either go ahead and click on this button here, or just do a keyboard shortcut of Command N. Let me just click the plus button. Okay, so there's our first reminder. Let's enter something in, get some new shoes, and that's our reminder created. Now I can, if I hover above the reminder, see this little eye, click on there, that gives me this pop-out panel. So I can remind myself on a day, on a particular day and time, or at a location. Now the Reminders application does support geofencing. So if you do synchronize your reminders with a portable device, I'm not saying that you will be carrying your laptop around with you for these geolocation triggers to activate, but if you synchronize the reminder with an iPhone, say, and then when you go to that location, it will actually kick off and give you the reminder. So, well, let's have a look at the on a day one first. So this one here, I can specify a day and a time. So today is the 14th, and that's going to trigger at 11 o'clock. It's 10:34. So what I'm going to do is change this to 10:36, and we'll say done. So that's going to trigger today at 10:36. So we'll just leave that until the alarm triggers. Okay, and there we go. So we have a notification with the notification center. I can close it at this point, or I can say snooze, and snooze will buy me an extra 15 minutes time, and it will just remind me again in 15 minutes. But let's just go ahead and say close, and let me go ahead and say that's completed. Okay, once I have a completed task or reminder, I get this new completed list, and I can check all my completed reminders in there. Let's go to the home list. Let's create another reminder. Let's say I wanted a repeating reminder, say to put the bins out or put the garbage out every Friday morning. So put the bins out. And again, select the reminder, click on the eye. It's going to be on a day. And it's going to be every Friday. So that's going to be Friday the 17th is the next one. Let's say at 8 o'clock in the morning. And we'll have repeat every week. And never. And we'll say done. So that's now a recurring reminder that will remind me every Friday morning to put the bins out. Let's have a look at the geolocation stuff. Let's go back to, say, the shopping list. Let's create another reminder. Now, several ways of doing this. You can just type in a location and the Reminders app will go ahead and try and find that location for you. Or you can have locations in your address book, or should I say rather, your new contacts application. So I've actually put the address of my local supermarket into my contacts book. So all I need to do is to, let's say I wanted to be reminded to buy some bread when I went to my local Tesco. Buy some bread. Again, click on the eye at a location. So this time I will just say Tesco. It's got the address. You see there's a little location symbol here as well. Currently when leaving Tesco, well, that wouldn't be any good because I'd be on my way out. But arriving at Tesco, I want reminders to prompt me to buy some bread. And we'll say done. So now Reminders is syncing automatically with iCloud, and that reminder will appear on my iPhone. So when I actually go to my local supermarket, I should get a reminder to buy some bread. So just a few of the other controls I can search here. So if I wanted to search for bins, well, you can see there are two entries with just B in, but BI, there we go, it's just filtered to show me my bins reminder. So that's the search option. I can also pop up the mini calendar and have a look and see just by tapping on the various days what's happening on those days. You'll see under the 17th there's a little dot, indicates there is a reminder there for me. I can click on there and that's my put the bins out reminder. One other piece of integration that Apple have included in Mountain Lion is the ability to drag emails into reminders. So for instance, if you get an email coming in and you want to just prompt yourself to respond to it or to make an action, you can just drag that in. I'll just go across to my email. Okay, I've got an email here from Don McAllister saying, don't forget to send me that list of restaurants in Liverpool. So all I need to do is just drag this out. Now I can either drop it on here, or if I want to drop it on another list, I can actually just select the list, let go, right, and that's now there. Close my mail down, so I can set myself a reminder on a particular day or on a location, set it up to be a repeating, etc. Give it a priority, so high priority. If I want to see the original email, I can just tap on here, and that shows me the original email that generated the reminder. So very simple, very nice little application. The power, of course, though, is its synchronization with iCloud and iOS. The address book in Mac OS X no longer exists. It's now called the Contacts application, and that matches with Contacts on iOS, and it's part of the strategy in Mountain Lion to sort of make Mac OS X a bit more familiar to people coming across from iOS devices. Interestingly, though, if I do use Spotlight and try and search for address book, the Contacts application pops up. So there we are, Contacts. Very similar to as it was before. They have changed the view slightly. We still have this 2-page view, but we don't get the page turn anymore. You can view a single card. So if you want to just view a single card, you can. That's our 2-pane view. And then we have a 3-pane view as well. And this allows us now to actually see all our information and access the groups at the side as well. We get this little mini sheet appearing on the left-hand side. So I can just click on all contacts, family, friends, Mac Roundtable, etc. Back up to all contacts. To create new groups, you do it from the file menu. So you can create a new group. You can select some contacts and make a new group from selection. Or you can do a smart group. So if you want to set up some criteria to create a particular smart group, you can do that. The only other changes, as far as I can see, we have a new share button down here. Again, we can export the VCF card. When you export information from your Contacts application, it's in the form of a VCF, which is sort of like an interchangeable format. So you can share contact details with various people. I can email the card, I can message it, I can also airdrop it as well. Airdropping a card might be useful if you're in an environment on a shared Wi-Fi network and you have people you want to share your contact details with. You can just airdrop them your contacts details. But that's pretty much it with the address book. Nothing too, or rather contacts, nothing too dramatic change there. As far as calendaring is concerned, iCal no longer exists, at least not in name. They've just renamed iCal to Calendar. So if I go to Spotlight, hit Calendar, we get the... actually, again, it's not that dramatically changed. It still looks very much like the calendar in Lion. They've lost the stitching, so the skeuomorphic aspect has been toned down slightly, although we still have the torn paper and the faux leather, but we don't have stitching anymore. A couple of new things, though. If we go to calendars, rather than the pop-out for calendars, we actually do get now a dedicated sidebar. So I can see all my different iCloud calendars. We have the mini calendar down at the bottom. I can drag that up, actually, if I want to see other months. So that's quite neat. As far as entering events into your calendar, you can hit this plus button, or you can do Command N for a quick event. Let's just hit the button, get this little pop-up. It defaults to movie at 7 p.m. on Friday. It is intelligent in that it can parse what you put in and make a decent stab at what it is and when it is that you're going to do something. So for instance, if I said driving test on Monday at 4 p.m. and then hit return, you can see there we go. So that's Monday, the 20th of August, which is the next Monday at 1600 hours, so 4 o'clock, and we'll just say done, and that's my new event popped in. Views are the same as before, so we've got our day view, we have the week view, the month view, and also our year view with the heat map. Search has been changed slightly. If we go up into search, let me just put this back to, say, the week view. If I go into search, it now uses tokens, very similar to the way that Mail now operates. So, for instance, if I wanted to search for dinner, if I just put dinner in, you'll see, well, most of the events are titles. I've got dinner in the titles here. Let's try something else. If I type in Don, right, so I can search by people. So I can see all the events connected with Don McAllister and that particular email address. I can search for titles as well. I can also search for notes containing Don as well. And now there are some minor changes to customizing events and alerts, such as setting up recurring events, etc. for specific events, but nothing too earth-shattering. The main change has been the rename of iCloud to Calendar and also this new dedicated sidebar. I'm going to finish off this week's show with a quick look at a new application that's Messages for OS X. I have a feeling I might have to return to this particular topic because it's quite complex in some respects in the way that it's set up. It's very simple to operate, but people do tend to get a bit confused as to how to address things and who can receive iMessages via the message application. But for today, I think I'll just take an overlook really at some of its functionality. So let me just start it off. In fact, I've already run it. So here we have Messages. Messages is a replacement for iChat, and it allows you to send iMessages to various other iCloud users completely free of charge. But not only that, it does have full support for other instant messaging clients such as Gmail and Yahoo, I think AOL and Jabber. So you can use it as sort of like a message hub to communicate with other people. And we've seen already that a lot of the share options within the various applications within OS X Mountain Lion do have options to share emails or share images, etc. via Messages. So you can send quite rich multimedia messages across for free using the Messages application. But a very simple way to use it, I mean, I've just loaded up the basic interface. If I want to send an iMessage to another iCloud user, I can either tap on this blue button over here in the address bar. That will give me access to my contacts list. Now I know that if I scroll down, I'm in here. Now that's a dummy iPhone number, but some live email addresses, all of which I've used before using Messages, and it's identified that these are emails that are registered with the Messages service, and I can actually send iMessages completely free of charge to any of these emails. So if I wanted to send to, say, to this particular one here, I just select that, and then down at the bottom, I send my message. Okay, so that's sent it across. Now, I already heard that appear on my iPhone. I have my iPhone set up using that particular email address to accept iMessages. So I can just pick up my iPhone. I can see the message on my iPhone and respond. And there's the response back within Messages on the Mac. So this is just another way of communicating with other iCloud users, whether or not they be on an iOS device or on another Mac. It could be an iPhone, an iPad, or a Mac. You can send a message to them. As long as you know the email address that they use to communicate using iMessage, you can set them up and send messages to them and receive messages back as well. So as far as sharing things are concerned, let me just pop that down. So over in the Finder, back in my Pictures folder, I've selected this image here. If I want to share it using Messages, I just tap on the share icon, select Message. Okay, who to? Select that Don McAllister address I used before, which is that one. Hit return. Put my message on. Give it a smiley face as well if I want. See, I don't want a dismissive smiley face. Let's give it a nice happy smiley face. And send. So now if I close this down, bring iMessages back up. So there's the photo. It's been delivered as well. You get read and delivery messages in Messages. So that's been delivered. If I pick up my phone, okay, it's now appeared. So if I open it on my iPhone and respond, I'll say thanks. Okay, that's now back. And again, I can see that the message, as well as being delivered now, I can also see that the message was read, but I've had my response back thanking me for the image. Okay, so that's sending simple messages via iMessage to other iCloud users. Let's just have a quick look at setting it up for other IM clients. I'll set this up for my account on Google and have a look at Google Talk using Messages. So I need to set up my account. So if I go into Messages Preferences and then under Accounts. So I've got a Bonjour account which is currently inactive. That will just, if I enable that, that will enable me to see other users on the same local area network. But I'll leave that off. There's my SCO demo at Mac, which is my iMessage account. Let me hit plus. Account type, Google Talk. So I've got a Gmail address, my account name. So it's screencastonline@gmail.com. And my password, which appears to be in my keychain. And we'll say done. Okay, that wasn't my password, or it was an incorrect password. So let me put the correct one in. Right, so after a little bit of messing with my password, I've finally managed to log on. As you can see down at the bottom, Jabber. So I can set my status, currently available or away or at home, etc. I'll leave it as available. Now, if I want to create a conversation or start speaking to one of my buddies, that are already logged into the the Gmail service, the Google Chat service. I can do it several ways. Probably the easiest way is just to create a new conversation. So if I compose new message, and this time when I hit the plus button, it's slightly different. So as well as seeing my contacts, which we saw before, I now have this new option here, which is buddies. So if I tap on there, I can see instantly who is online and who's offline. Now I know that Klaus is online and has agreed for me to chat to him, so let's give it a quick go. Now, this is just a straightforward IM conversation. I can also use video, I can use audio chat as well, but this is just really to show you how easy it is using the Messages service and how it really compares as well to iChat, very similar. Now, obviously, you don't want to sit here watching Klaus and I type to one another over the next few minutes, so I'll speed this up. But you'll notice that when the other person is typing, we do get some indication that there's some activity, but that should do for now. Okay, so that's completed. I can now set my status to offline, so I can leave that now. If I want to, I can close this conversation or I can delete this conversation. Just click on little X, delete the conversation, and that's gone. So that's probably all I need to cover for today with the new Messages application, but we might revisit this in the future. The first half dozen or so new features are all accessible via System Preferences, so I've loaded up System Preferences and we'll just work through each one by one. Now, the first one are some changes to the screensavers. So if we go to Personal, Desktop and Screensaver, the desktop side of things is pretty much as was before, so you can add your own folders, you can access desktop pictures that are pre-installed for you, or just solid colors, but the new changes really are under Screensaver. Now, as you can see, quite a few new entries here. We've got slideshows. If I just scroll down, we've got some of the original screensavers as well. You'll notice the RSS screensaver is no longer here. Mountain Lion has removed support for RSS in Mail and Safari, and consequently there is no RSS screensaver anymore. But these new ones are quite nice. Various ones. You can play with these yourself, obviously. So there's a floating one, flip up, origami, reflection, shifting tiles, sliding panels, and you get this preview over here. As far as the source of the graphics are concerned, you can look at your recent iPhoto events. There are some default collections. I particularly like the Cosmos one, to be honest, but National Geographic, Ariel, so all sorts of different ones. You can also choose a folder. So if you have a folder of photos, you can choose that folder to be used in the screensaver and also your photo library as well. If you click on there, that gives you access to your events, photos, faces, and places in iPhoto. And again, if you have Aperture installed, I believe this works with Aperture as well. Options to shuffle your slide order, and also an option to show with the clock as well. Now you can set up some hot corners, so if you want your screensaver to kick off as soon as you move your mouse into a particular corner, let's say we go down to, there we go, start screensaver. As soon as I now mouse down to the bottom corner, that will actually start the screensaver. We'll escape out of that. Now, another thing to notice, if you have multiple monitors, the same screensaver is displayed on all monitors. Okay, so that's the screensavers. Well worth having a play around with those. Find your favorite one. Let's go back to Show All. Now, the next thing is a slight change to Mission Control. Now, Mission Control is the mechanism whereby you can group all windows together, and the default behavior, if I actually do Mission Control, and on this machine, I think on most machines it's configured for a 4-finger swipe upwards, we actually get to see all the open windows on the screen. Now, I've opened 3 Safari windows and also 3 text edit windows. And by default, Mission Control will actually group them all together. So I can see all my Safari windows. So there are 3 Safari windows and 3 text edit windows. You can open these up slightly by using a 2-finger swipe upwards, and that will actually pop the windows open slightly. So again, if I do it over here, 2-finger swipe upwards, just separates the windows so you can see them. But Apple have now included a switch that allow you to disable this grouping command. If I just come out of here, if I go into System Preferences, then into Mission Control, you'll see here Group Windows by Application. I think that's switched on by default. If we switch that off, let's close that down. And now if I do a 4-finger swipe upwards to go into Mission Control, you'll see that the windows are no longer grouped by application, and you can actually see the entire contents of all the windows. Find the window that you want, and that pops to the front. To be honest though, if I just go back into System Preferences, I think I do actually prefer having that switched on and having my dashboard switched off as a space as well. There's another setting as well which you might want to switch on, which isn't switched on by default, and that's under Gestures. If you're using a trackpad, if you go into Trackpad, yeah, this one here, App Expose, I tend to switch that on. That allows you to, if I now go down to the dock, say find my text edit icon, and then swipe down with 4 fingers, I can see the 3 text edit windows in this expose view, and then I can actually just pick the one that I want to bring to the fore. Okay, so that's just some minor changes in mission control. This next section is really aimed at those people who use Tweetbot, but I suppose the sort of techniques behind it might be applicable in the future as more and more applications become notification center aware. Now the issue, if I just pop system preferences out of the way, let's bring up Tweetbot. I've already sent myself some test messages this morning. Let me send another one, just to illustrate what the problem is. If I send a final test message. Okay, so I see one new tweet come in Tweetbot, but also in Notification Center, because I've got notifications switched on, I see a notification come up. I swipe across. Don't forget, it's a 2-finger swipe across from the right-hand side of the trackpad. Brings Notification Center up. So let's say I've got Tweetbot minimized, but I actually want to have a look at that tweet. If I click on there, it actually opens it in the web interface, and I've got to sign into Twitter, etc. And that's a real pain to do. Now, the way around this, if we go into Tweetbot, let's set up Tweetbot properly. So if I go into Preferences, I'll set up my notifications in here. So let's say all. Let's say I want my direct messages, retweets, favorites, and follows. So I want everything from Tweetbot to appear in Notification Center. So that's fine. I can close that down. Let's configure Notification Center. So again, swipe across with 2 fingers from the right-hand side. Click on this little icon down at the bottom. Okay, so now, right, there's Tweetbot. So I want it to be banners. I want it to show Notification Center. I want my badge app icon and a sound as well. Okay, so that's there. So you probably think, right, that's great. But if we do it again, if I close this down and then send another test message. Okay, so there's our notification. If we go across, if I click on there, again, even though I've set up Tweetbot, it's still taking me across to the web service to sign into Twitter. Not what I wanted to do. And the reason for that, again, if we go into notifications configuration, is I still have the system integration Twitter in my notification center. So what I actually want to do is set that to none, take all these off. Okay, so the only notification service that's Twitter aware now is Tweetbot. So if I close that down, let's do another test, and I'll send that off from my iPhone. So now I get the proper notification. If I click on that notification, it actually opens up the tweet in Tweetbot. Okay, very simple. I just want to include that because I know it is frustrating a lot of people and it's very easy to fix. Back across to system preferences. Now, the next thing I just wanted to point out to you are some changes to security and privacy. Right, now this really hasn't changed very much. Obviously, under general, we now have the Gatekeeper options, which I covered in a previous episode. And again, I would recommend that you leave it on the middle value and use the right or control click on any unsigned applications to open them the first time you do that. File Vault I tend not to use. File Vault is a way of doing a whole disk encryption for security. And I probably need to look at this in the future, but it's something I've not really felt the need for. But if you are using a laptop or if you have highly secure information on your desktop machine, File Vault might be something you want to check out and basically encrypt the entire disk. There's a firewall option, which again, I tend to leave off. For security, you might want to switch that on. There are some changes actually to the firewall. If I click on here, we just authenticate. We turn on the firewall and go under firewall options. There are some new entries in here to, here we go, automatically allow signed software to receive incoming connections. So again, this is part of Gatekeeper. So if you have a trusted application that's been signed, you can select this option here and the firewall will automatically allow that particular application to receive incoming connections. But probably not for this particular show, but the firewall is there if you do want to switch it on. It just really protects your machine from unauthorized access across the network. But I'm going to turn that off for now. And then privacy. Some new entries under privacy. We've got location services now. There are only 2 applications currently on here that support location services. Tweetbot, no, I've actually switched that off because I don't want to broadcast my location every time I'm using Tweetbot. I tend to normally do that from home anyway when I'm on my Mac. And also reminders, which is switched on. And again, in the previous episode, we saw using location aware reminders in the reminders application. So this is a good place really to check on those applications that are location aware, and you can remove their capabilities just by unchecking the boxes next to them if you don't want them to actually use your location. Now the next one is contacts. This is a bit strange actually, and you'll find on your machine, you might find a whole list of applications on here that you've allowed access to get to your contacts data. And some of them might be a bit strange. For instance, Mouse I mean, that's a cursor enhancement program. Why on earth would that need access to my contacts address book? Well, it transpires that many applications actually use your own personal address card in address book in previous versions of OS X, so that it can populate sort of support forms for you, etc. So it's not really interested in your entire contacts list, but probably just your individual Me card. And now there's a great blog post about this over on Red Sweater software by Daniel Jalkut. If you want to have a read through that, that will give you a bit more information, but it looks as though it is just the Me card that it's trying to access. But because of the enhanced security in Mountain Lion, it will be registered under System Preferences as an application that you've allowed to access your contacts list. But check out that blog post if you want more information about that. Next one is Twitter. So any apps that have requested access to Twitter will appear here. So any third-party apps, not necessarily Tweetbot, that's a standalone application, but other applications that use the built-in Twitter integration will appear here. And then we have finally diagnostics and usage. So you can optionally send diagnostic and usage data across to Apple to help them improve their services. So that's the security and privacy changes. Let's go back to Show All. Now the next one is Time Machine, some significant changes with Time Machine. Time Machine, as you're probably well aware, is OS X's built-in mechanism for creating backups and accessible via System Preferences. You can also show it in the menu bar as well, so I'll just switch that on. Okay, so currently I've got this set up. It's currently set up to back up to a disk I've called RMBP-Time Machine. Now that drive is actually a Thunderbolt connected drive. Not connected at the moment, although it is connected, but it's unmounted. So what I'm going to do is go across to Disk Utility. Right, that's the drive there. Let me just mount that drive so it connects to the machine. And we should see Time Machine burst into life. Well, there you go. Next backup is going to be at 10:51. Let's run that straight away. We'll say backup now. And I'll just let that run through. It shouldn't be that big a backup. Yeah, it's just 300 megabytes, so we'll let that finish. Okay, that's done. Literally only took probably less than a minute. It's one of the beauties of having the Thunderbolt drive. The speeds are fantastic. But anyway, that's completed. So I've now got my Time Machine backup on a single drive. Now, what would be nice would be to have a backup of my Time Machine backup. It would be nice to introduce a second disk and perhaps back up to that. And you could do that before, but what you would have to do is go to Select Disk, select another disk, and then it would just copy to that other disk. And then if you wanted to move it back to the original disk, you'd have to select that original disk and sort of swap them in and out manually. Well, with Mountain Lion, that swapping is done automatically. It will support multiple drives and actually cycle between them when it does a backup. So if I now go here and select disk, that's the one I've currently got. These are the other available disks. So let's say I wanted to use this one, this WD offline backup. That's another Thunderbolt connected drive. Let's say use disk. Okay, a new option now. So do you want to replace the backup disk, LC, that's for Lacey, RMBP Time Machine, or backup to both disks? And if you use both, Time Machine will take turns backing up between that disk and the new disk you selected. So if I say use both, okay, I can now see there's my original drive. The last backup was the 15th of August at 10:26, and this one here is the new drive, and this is waiting to back up. So I can now add additional drives as well if I want. So this is really nice in that I can now have multiple copies of my Time Machine backup. And if I then try to restore from my Time Machine backup, it will select the correct backup with the most recent version of Time Machine on. Also as well, I could now, if I wanted to, this offline backup, I could disconnect this, take it off-site and put it away somewhere. So I could actually use Time Machine in an off-site backup situation. Now this will also work to network drives as well, so it doesn't necessarily have to be a physically connected drive. You could specify a network connected drive and use that as part of the multiple drive scenario. But I won't wait for that to back up. In fact, what I'll do, let's add or remove. Let's remove this second one. Stop using this disk, and now I'm back to just a single disk for Time Machine. Now, one other option to point out, and that's if you're going to select disk, there is an option to encrypt backups. Now, I understand that's only available for locally connected drives, so if you have a physical connection to the drive, it won't work over network drives, but you can encrypt your backups as well. So if you're at all worried about security or need to have that extra level of security, you can encrypt your locally attached Time Machine backups. but I'm going to go ahead and say cancel that, and we're back to 1. If you do set up multiple drives and the second drive isn't available for a while, it will just keep backing up to your original drive, and then when the second drive becomes available, it will just start cycling between them. So it's nice to see that extra level of security and functionality now built into Time Machine. Now, before moving on to the next section, I'll just take Time Machine out of the menu bar and just temporarily switch it off. The next few things aren't really connected with system preferences. First being a slight change to full screen mode. Now, full screen mode still works as it did before in that the application window takes up the entire full screen. Just to demonstrate, this is Pixelmator, and as you can see, I've got the menu bar at the top. So this is my primary monitor. So as before, if I go into full screen mode, the main Pixelmator window takes up the full screen. I have these tool palettes here, and I can actually drag these off because I've got a multiple monitor setup. I've got a secondary monitor next to the primary monitor. I can actually drag these tool palettes across and off, and then just bring them back. Now the big change is that it used to always be, if I just take this out of full screen mode, it used to always be that no matter which monitor your application was on, when you went into full screen, it would always go full screen on the primary monitor. Now that's changed in Mountain Lion. If I actually drag this, which is the main application window, across to my secondary monitor, and then although you can't see this on my secondary monitor now, if I click the full screen button in the corner of the application window, so what has happened is the application's gone full screen and temporarily converted the other display into the primary monitor, and the tool palettes have now remained on this window, which is actually the secondary window. If I bring the cursor back over and go up to the top, you'll see I can't actually bring up the full screen commands anymore because it's temporarily changed my primary monitor to the other monitor, which I should be able to click on, and that returns this monitor to be my primary monitor, and I can drag the application back across if I want to. Okay, so the main change in full screen mode is that the application will go into full screen on whichever monitor it's currently residing on, not necessarily always the primary monitor. Okay, let's have a quick look at a slight change to screen sharing. Now, to demonstrate the slight change in screen sharing, I've basically opened a Finder window. Over on my remote machine, which is the Mac Pro server, I've switched on screen sharing under System Preferences in the sharing option. So now it's appearing in my sidebar. If I tap on here and tap on Share Screen, okay, I need to log in as a registered user. Let's do that. Put in my password. Let's remember this in the keychain so I don't have to put this in next time, and say connect. Okay, so that's the logon screen for my Mac Pro server. Let me just log in. Okay, the new feature, I think it's new in Mountain Lion. It might have been introduced in Lion actually, but it's something I don't think I've demonstrated before. And that's the way you can now drag and drop files between your local machine and the remote machine via screen sharing. So if I wanted to get this initial draft document, this is just a straightforward rich text format document over to my remote machine, just drag it across to the screen sharing session, let go, and you'll see a list of file transfers. It's been sent. It's only a relatively small file, so that's pretty quick to send it across. Now, I could have sent it using file sharing, but if you're using screen sharing, you can do this. Let's show you another way as well to bring it back. If I delete the original off my desktop, if I grab this document on the remote machine, bring it across, and you can see we've got the plus button, let go, and in our file transfers, it's now been received. Okay, so relatively minor new feature, but it works very well. I would recommend, to be honest though, if you have multiple Macs or even a couple of Macs within the home or business environment, that you do check out Remote Desktop. I have done a tutorial on Remote Desktop, but it really is well worth it. But if you haven't got Remote Desktop, this new drag and drop feature for file sharing might be very useful to you. Okay, so that's the new feature within screen sharing. Now, before we look at the brand new features for newer Macs, let's just have a look at one terminal tweak just to make your file save dialog box perhaps a little bit more efficient, especially if you're not using iCloud that much. Now, we all know that we've got iCloud built into Mountain Lion. So if we run TextEdit, we get the standard file open dialog box. And as I've mentioned before, at this point, it doesn't really matter where you save your document. It's really a file open, so you can either open from iCloud or you can open from on your Mac. But to create a new document, we just say new document. Put some text in. Okay, so we're now going to save it. So file save. Now by default, it will always try and prompt you to save to iCloud. But it might be that perhaps that's not what you're comfortable with, or you have a different workflow and you really want to save it to, somewhere locally on your Mac rather than iCloud. So you have to click on here and select somewhere on your Mac, and then you've got to go up here, and then you've got to navigate to where you want to save it. So it will be better, rather than file save defaulting to iCloud, again, it's just defaulted to iCloud, if it defaulted to somewhere on your Mac. Now, you can't actually change that in the GUI, there is no settings, but there is a command line tweak that you can put into Terminal, one of the default write commands. So if I open up Terminal, and then rather than type it out, I'm going to copy it. I've got it copied off screen. So I'll copy it and then Command V, right defaults, right. Well, I won't read it all out. Basically, you can see it on the screen. I'll also, if I remember, try and put it in the show notes as well, so you can just copy it directly from there. But basically, that's the command. Hit return. Now, I do have to change, or rather, quit this application. I won't save this, so we'll say delete. Let me run TextEdit again. We'll create a new document. We'll put some text in. We'll do a file save. And this time, rather than defaulting to iCloud, it's defaulted to your local Mac. So you can now use the standard features of the Save dialog box to save it somewhere on your hard disk. And don't forget those shortcuts if you want to save it on your desktop. Command D will take you to your desktop. Command Shift O will take you to your documents. There are several sort of key combinations you can use to navigate around the standard dialog box. Okay, but let's cancel this for now. If you want to put it back as it was, all you need to do is just put the same command in, but this time at the end, rather than saying false, say true, and then reload your application, and things will be back to as it was before. But for those non-iCloud devotees, I think that little hack will be most welcome. Okay, let's have a look at some of the new features for some of the newer Macs. You're probably already familiar with AirPlay if you've used iTunes or if you have an iOS device, but AirPlay now comes to the Mac, and we can actually do AirPlay mirroring of both video and audio from OS X. Now, there are a few provisos, as it's only supported on certain devices. Now, it does, for video AirPlay mirroring, it does require a second generation Apple TV or later, but it's only supported on models that are mid-2011 or newer. So the iMac, the Mac Mini, the MacBook Air, and the MacBook Pro. In fact, the MacBook Pro is early 2011 or newer. So if you have machines older than that, unfortunately, you won't be able to use the built-in AirPlay mirroring. There are some third-party applications and solutions, which I'll mention at the end of this section, but let's just focus on the standard AirPlay mirroring built into OS X Mountain Lion. So this particular Mac is one of the new Retina MacBook Pros, does support AirPlay mirroring. You can see up in the menu bar, I have this little option here. I'm fortunate enough to have a couple of Apple TVs dotted around the house, and it's picked those up okay. But let's have a look at display preferences, and we'll see how that's set up first. So this is the display panel for the Retina MacBook Pro. I've shown this to you before about how you can change the screen resolution. Down here at the bottom, we have AirPlay mirroring. Now I can select any one of those Apple TVs. Let's select my Office Apple TV. Now you'll notice on the representation of the TV, I can actually see the menu bar of the desktop, and everything I do on the desktop now would be replicated across on the TV via the Apple TV. The reason I can see the menu bar on the TV is that I have overscan correction switched on. If I were to switch that off, the menu bar would actually disappear off the screen, so I'm going to leave that switched on. So now I have AirPlay working to my TV. Anything that happens on screen now will appear on the TV as well. So for instance, if I wanted to go to Safari, say, we have a thing called iPlayer over here in the UK. You have Hulu and stuff like that over in the States. But if I wanted to play one of these programs, let's just select this particular program. Click on the video to start playing. We'll just close that down slightly. I can make this go full screen. And that now appears full screen on the Apple TV as well. So let me mute that. So I can now watch my BBC iPlayer programs on my large screen TV directly from a Mac. But of course, anything you can do in Safari, in fact, anything you can do on your Mac now, you can actually mirror across to your TV using AirPlay. Now there is another option, and that's to AirPlay just the system audio. Now to do that, we need to go to Sound under System Preferences. And if I actually scroll down, you'll see under Output, all our AirPlay devices are actually included here as well. With one additional one here, I've got an AirPod Express. Now that only supports audio, so that didn't appear in the video AirPlay settings, but all my Apple TVs now appear here for audio. So I can select one of these and then send the audio of my system audio. So say I'm playing Spotify and I want to send that to an Apple TV or to an Airport Express. I can just select the device from here and send it directly from my Mac. I did mention earlier on there are some third-party alternatives to the built-in AirPlay. If you found that Mountain Lion isn't supported, or AirPlay on Mountain Lion isn't supported on your Mac, let me just pop System Preferences down, get that out of the way, and I'll go back to Safari. Now the first one is an application called AirParrot, and this allows you to mirror your Mac to your Apple TV, so that's both video and audio. It's around about $10, I think. Let's have a quick look. Yeah, it's about $10 for a single user or $30 for a 5-seat license. I've had a quick play with it and it does seem to work pretty well, so that's one solution. The other solution is for audio, and an application I've used for a long time now is this one by Rogue Amoeba called Airfoil. And Airfoil for Mac, it's about $25, but again, it allows you to send the system audio from your Mac to any other Mac that's got Airfoil speakers installed, and some extra things as well, actually. And both these applications I think I will cover in the near future. I won't cover it on today's show, but just be aware that both Rogue Amoeba, Airfoil for Mac, and also AirParrot are viable solutions if you have an older Mac and want to play with AirPlay type technology. Now, the final bit of new Mountain Lion technology I want to point out to you, I can't really demonstrate it to be honest, but I'll just let you know that it's available. But it is only available for very new Macs, and that's this new feature called Power Nap. Now, to get to Power Nap, it's under Energy Saver, and within Energy Saver, if your Mac supports it, you'll have this option now to enable Power Nap while plugged into a power adapter. And basically what Power Nap allows you to do is, while your Mac is sleeping, it can actually back up using Time Machine, and as you can see, periodically check for new email, calendar, and other iCloud updates. By default, Power Nap is enabled while you're plugged into a power adapter, but under battery there is also an option to enable it whilst on battery power. It doesn't do as much. In fact, if you go across to, I've actually already got it in Safari, there is a support document about Power Nap, and this shows you, well, it's limited at the moment. At the time of recording, this is in August 2012. It's only supported on the MacBook Air mid-2012, the MacBook Air mid-2011, and the new MacBook Pro Retina mid-2012. And you do need one of these SMC, these firmware updates, to enable it. And as you can see here, a full list of things that it does. It receives new mail messages, contacts, calendars, reminders, notes, documents in the cloud, pushes any edits you've made to your documents, photo stream, App Store updates, Time Machine backups, Find My Mac, VPN on demand, and the configuration profiles can receive updates. And when plugged into a power source, it actually does software updates, makes backups, performs spotlight indexing, all sorts of things. And it's perfectly silent as well, so you don't actually hear it. No lights come on, no fans come on. Now, it does switch off when your battery has 30% or less charge, and also they do recommend that you disconnect any Thunderbolt connected peripherals to increase your battery life. But anyway, that's Power Nap. We'll probably see that a lot more on new Macs as they come out. So that just about wraps up SCOtutor for Mountain Lion. Now, for information on additional Screencasts Online tutorials, please visit screencastsonline.com, where you can learn about our weekly Mac and iOS tutorials for Screencasts Online members, the additional SCOtutor apps available in the App Store, as well as the Screencasts Online monthly iPad magazine, now available from the iPad Newsstand application. So I hope you've enjoyed this app and found the information useful. And this is Don McAllister signing off, and I look forward to speaking with you next time.